So recently, I found out that PS2 emulators on PC just straight up let you play games straight from the original discs. This means that basically any modern computer with a DVD drive is also a PlayStation 2. After having this revelation, I decided to test this functionality by going to my local secondhand electronics store and picking up two PS2 games, those being Final Fantasy XII and Sonic Heroes. And they both work flawlessly. In fact, it's probably better than playing on actual hardware because of all the enhancements the PCSX2 emulator comes with, like resolution upscaling, widescreen and frame rate patches, achievements, leaderboards, Discord-rich presence, and more. Since Sonic Heroes is by far the shorter game here, that's the one we're going to be talking about today. Sonic Heroes was Sega's follow-up to the fan-favorite Sonic Adventure 2, coming out for the GameCube, original Xbox, and PS2 in December 2003 in Japan and January 2004 in North America. The game follows four teams who are all running through the game's 14 different stages for their own reasons, before they all unite at the end to take down a greater foe. I will be covering every campaign in this game in the order that I played them, starting with... The first playthrough I did was Team Sonic's, which, if you ever play this game, I recommend you do not do. Despite being listed first on the campaign select, Team Sonic should not be your first run through the game. Team Rose should be, and I'll explain why later. Consisting of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, Team Sonic wants to stop Dr. Eggman from taking over the world over the course of 3 days. There's a short opening cutscene, then bam, you're in the game now. Now, before I talk about Team Sonic's campaign specifically, I want to talk about the general gameplay. For the most part, I think Sonic Heroes controls pretty well. For the most part. Gameplay is split up into three different character types: speed, flying, and power. They all work fine for the majority of the game's runtime. Each type of character handles differently and has different abilities. Speed characters are the fastest and have the ability to use a homing attack, create a small tornado in the air, and jump off of walls in small gaps. You'll generally use them in long, straight sections of a level. Flying characters are generally slower, but have much greater air mobility and can use a projectile attack. You'll often use a flying character for more precise platforming that wouldn't be as intuitive with your speed character. Finally, power characters have the strongest combat prowess of the three, with almost all of their moveset being dedicated to breaking stuff, but occasionally having a mid-air glide. Needless to say, you'll be using a power character for the lion's share of the game's combat encounters and boss battles. 90% of the time, all three of these character types work pretty well. But there are moments where the system just seemingly breaks, or a specific section wasn't thought out well enough. For example, sometimes I'll be trying to cross a gap with a flying character, and they'll run out of stamina just before I make it to the platform, causing me to fall to my death. I've also had issues with characters getting shot through the ground and into the void. This overall is my biggest complaint about Sonic Heroes, its general lack of polish. Most of these issues could probably have been avoided if the game had a couple more months in the oven. But the game is good overall, I swear. Anyway, every team's campaign has 14 stages, which, in order, are Seaside Hill, Ocean Temple, Grand Metropolis, Power Plant, Casino Park, Bingo Highway, Rail Canyon, Bull Station, Frog Forest, Lost Jungle, Hang Castle, Mystic Mansion, Egg Fleet, and Final Fortress, along with some boss fights in between. Every campaign follows this general outline, but each team's version of the main stages have differences from each other to keep things interesting. Team Sonic's versions of Seaside Hill, Ocean Temple, Grand Metropolis, and Power Plant are all pretty fun and serve as good introduction levels. However, things turn south at Casino Park, which, in my opinion, is the most consistently unfun level of the whole game. Every team's version of the stage is not fun to play through, solely because of the stupid pinball machine gimmick. Does this look fun to you? Thankfully, Bingo Highway is significantly better because there's only like 2 mandatory pinball segments in the entire thing. Rail Canyon and Bold Station are also quite fun with Team Sonic, although the rail system is a bit janky. I think it would have been better if switching between rails just required you to tilt the analog stick like in Shadow the Hedgehog, but here it requires you to tilt the stick and press the jump button. This works most of the time, however, sometimes the game will register it as you jumping off of the rail, which can be pretty annoying in a level like this where there's a bunch of rail sections over bottomless pits. Frog Forest and Lost Jungle are fun stages. I like the frog gimmick. However, the alligator section at the end of Lost Jungle can be a bit infuriating because you have to consistently get the timing right on about 20 of these swinging vines in a row. The timing window is fairly generous, but it can still be annoying to get through. Hang Castle and Mystic Mansion are also pretty good. I think the switches that turn the level upside down and right side up are a cool gimmick, but there's also a section at the end of Mystic Mansion that's kinda poorly telegraphed as to what you're supposed to do. This ended up causing me a game over, which meant I had to play through the whole thing again. I guess that's a good segue into my second biggest problem with this game, the life system. Normally, I don't mind life systems in older platformers, since the levels are usually fairly short and it's not a huge deal if you get a game over. However, Sonic Heroes levels are pretty meaty, with multiple checkpoints, so it can be devastating to get a game over, especially if you're at the last checkpoint of a level. This happened to me multiple times throughout my playthrough, which definitely soured my opinion on a few of these stages. But anyway, after Mystic Mansion is Egg Fleet, which was my favorite stage in almost every campaign. It's an awesome set piece, the difficulty feels just right, and there's plenty of cool moments throughout. But after a peak comes a valley. Final Fortress. When I was playing through Team Sonic's campaign, I genuinely couldn't decide if I disliked this or Casino Park more. It's meant to be a final challenge, testing your skill with all 3 character types, but the game's lack of polish makes it land flat on its face. I'd be going down a rail section with Sonic, try to switch rails, and then careen off the edge. I'd try to cross the gap with Tails, run out of stamina right before landing on the other side, and then fall to my death. I'd knock over one of those big hammer guys with Knuckles, and then die as I'm trying to attack it because his hitboxes are really weird. And after all of that frustration, I don't realize I meant to use Tails to hover over the giant laser at the end. I get a game over, and I have to do it all again. Now that I think about it more, I think that yes, this is the worst level of Team Sonic's campaign, for me specifically. But completing Final Fortress isn't the end. There's also one final boss fight against the Man of Eggs himself, but before I get to that, I should probably talk about the other bosses first. There are 7 bosses in each of Sonic Heroes campaigns, taking place after every 2 stages. They are, in order, Egg Hawk, Team Battle 1, Robot Carnival, Egg Albatross, Team Battle 2, Robot Storm, and Egg Emperor. The boss fights are basically the same in every team's playthrough. Egg Hawk and Egg Albatross are both decent fights. They try to take advantage of all 3 characters, but you can honestly just spam homing attacks with Sonic and you'll be fine. The team battles are just kind of okay. These are fought against a different team, which changes depending on the campaign. The difference is pretty much just cosmetic, though. There aren't really any major gameplay changes. In Team Sonic's campaign, you fight Team Rose and Team Dark after Power Plant and Lost Jungle, respectively. The difficulty is very inconsistent. These fights can either last several minutes or less than 30 seconds, depending on how lucky you get. Robot Carnival and Robot Storm are just a bunch of waves of enemies. These are the only fights where I wish there was at least one checkpoint, because they can be pretty long and it can be annoying to have to blast through the whole thing again if you die. And now we can finally talk about the last boss of every campaign, Egg Emperor. I think the developers intended this fight to last way longer than it actually does, but if you get Tails to level 2, he can completely shred this thing. Oh wait, I didn't really mention the leveling system, did I? I didn't really notice any crazy improvements from leveling characters up during the stages. It's pretty much just the higher the level, the more damage you do. The only major difference between levels is that Tails and all the other flying type characters won't be able to directly deal damage unless they're at least level 2. And that would probably be a good time to also mention the Team Blast attack. It's a meter-based move that will destroy any non-boss enemies in the area in one shot. I found that I mostly ended up using it as an emergency escape button when I was about to get killed by something. Anyway, after destroying the Egg Emperor, a final pre-rendered cutscene plays where Sonic thanks Tails and Knuckles for helping him out, only for Amy to run in and start chasing after him. On that note, the credits roll on Team Sonic's campaign. Overall, I quite liked the Team Sonic route. Most of the levels were quite fun, it didn't feel too janky most of the time, and the music, as usual for Sonic games, was on point. After this playthrough, I was excited to hop into the next campaign, Team Dark. Team Dark's story is probably the most interesting out of all the teams, but since all the playthroughs follow the same framework, it doesn't really get a ton of points to flesh out said story. The opening cutscene follows Rouge the Bat infiltrating one of Eggman's bases in search of treasure. She opens the vault to find one of Eggman's robots, E123 Omega, and what appears to be a clone of Shadow the Hedgehog in stasis. After a brief scuffle, the 3 all decide to work together as they all have beef with the Doctor. Rouge wants Eggman's treasure, Shadow wants to find out if he's the real Shadow or just a copy, and Omega wants revenge on Eggman for keeping him locked up in that vault. And from there, they all go on their journey towards Eggman's base in pretty much the same order as Team Sonic does, except this time they fight Team Chaotix at Power Plant and Team Sonic at Lost Jungle. I kinda wish they shuffled around the order you play the main stages in for each of the campaigns, because they feel kinda samey. Team Dark's campaign is pretty much just Team Sonic's, but a bit harder and with some more combat in it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I liked Team Sonic's campaign, so I also liked Team Dark's. Like Team Sonic, Egg Fleet was Team Dark's best stage and Casino Park and Final Fortress were their worst. After defeating Egg Emperor for the second time, Team Dark's campaign ends in a cutscene teasing future stories to follow as Rouge discovers an entire hallway full of clones of Shadow. Honestly, the most impact Team Dark's campaign had was probably that its plot was directly followed up on in the next game, Shadow the Hedgehog. But that's a video for another day. Team Rose's campaign is basically the game's easy mode, which is odd because this is the 3rd one on the list. It's the only one that makes you play through the tutorial at the start, has significantly shorter stages than the rest of the teams, and is overall a lot less difficult than Team Sonic and Team Dark's campaigns were. This team's story is also the simplest out of the 4, with Amy Rose, Cream the Rabbit, and Big the Cat just wanting to find their respective friends. So I'd recommend you play Team Rose first to get a feel for the game, but it also just kind of feels like a campaign meant for one's little sister, if that makes sense. Now, there's one other campaign to look at, that being... I'll just preface this section by saying that Team Chaotix's campaign is the worst one in the game. Like, it's not even close. It's them. And that's a shame, because I really like Team Chaotix's characters. The story starts with Vector the Crocodile and Espio the Chameleon chilling in their detective office before Charmy the Bee bursts in with a new job for them from a mysterious client. Team Chaotix's stages are much different from the rest because instead of simply making it to the goal ring, you have to complete a specific mission. There are a few stages where this premise leads to unique and interesting ideas. For example, Frog Forest is a stealth mission where you have to sneak past all the frogs. Most of them just end up being collect X amount of things or defeat X amount of enemies. So I suppose it shouldn't come as a shock that Team Chaotix had the most stages I actively disliked. Casino Park is at its absolute worst here. Tired of those annoying pinball gimmicks after 3 different run-throughs of the stage? Well, now you have to get 200 rings in the pinball area, so now instead of 5 minutes of running through a mostly fine stage with some really annoying mechanics, you're now spending 10 straight minutes bouncing around the stupid pinball machine trying to get all the rings you need. In case you didn't realize, this isn't fun. And to quote the former CEO of Nintendo of America, Reggie Fils-Aimé,
"If it's not fun, why bother?"
Rail Canyon was also a real low point for me. For some reason, the rail jank in this level just seemed amplified compared to the other teams. I just kept flying off the rails and I had to start from the beginning multiple times. And somehow, Team Chaotix managed to even mess up Egg Fleet when it was consistently the best stage of every other campaign. They turned this bombastic set piece where you blow up a bunch of Eggman's battleships into a stealth mission. And while I thought the stealth mission in Frog Forest was pretty neat, the idea really suffers here. Especially because I don't think I was ever actually told by the game that Espio's invisibility animation he has when he uses his tornado attack thingy actually made him invisible. I guess that means my frustration here was more so with the game's poor telegraphing than the stage itself, but I still didn't like it. So believe me, I was dreading going into Final Fortress with Team Chaotix. If they messed up the best stage, how will they make the worst one even worse? But honestly, Final Fortress with Team Chaotix wasn't that bad. It probably helps that it ends up being shorter than Team Sonic and Team Dark's versions. After the Egg Emperor fight, it's revealed that the mysterious client was actually Eggman the whole time, and they dogpile on him after he says he doesn't actually have their payment. After that, the credits roll on the final campaign of this game. Or is it? In order to unlock the final story, you need to complete every campaign and collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, which I've neglected to mention until now. In order to collect these Chaos Emeralds, you need to enter this game's special stages. To access the special stages, you need to collect one of a few keys scattered around a stage and make it to the end without taking any damage. Now, I don't particularly like the special stages too much, I think they're too finicky. So basically, you're in this tube thing with the Chaos Emerald, and you have to catch up to it by collecting these little colorful spheres. My main gripe with these is that I think the slopes in these stages are bugged. It seems to me that you either end up going 1,000 miles an hour or you screech to a crawl, seemingly a complete random. My strategy I recommend for getting all 7 would be to just get the keys in Team Rose's stages because it's the shortest, and then only use Big during the special stage because he's probably the easiest to control, as the other characters just feel too slippery here. But anyway, once you've gotten all the emeralds, if you go back to the campaign select and try to scroll past Team Chaotix, you'll find the final story waiting for you. The final story opens with a series of cutscenes where it's revealed that all those times you thought you were fighting Eggman, you were actually fighting a copy created by Metal Sonic to collect data on all the characters. And now that he's gotten everything he needs, he transforms into Metal Overlord to finally fulfill the purpose he was created for, destroying Sonic the Hedgehog. So in order to stop Metal Sonic from doing this, all the teams you've played as over the course of the game come together and we get this gem of a line.
We'll show that creep the real superpower of teamwork!
The final story is pretty much one big boss fight split into 4 phases, one for each team. The first 3 phases are pretty much identical. Attack Metal Overlord's weak spot. You cycle through Team Rose, Team Chaotix, and Team Dark, buying enough time for Team Sonic to use the power of the Chaos Emeralds. The final phase of this fight is pretty cool. Sonic, now transformed into Super Sonic alongside Knuckles and Tails, enters an aerial battle against Metal Overlord set to the best song in the whole game, What I'm Made Of. You need to switch formations to counter each of Metal Overlord's attacks to charge up your Team Blast meter, as it's the only way you can damage him. After about 5 or so of these Team Blasts, Metal Overlord goes down and transforms back into Metal Sonic. And then, in an unintentionally hilarious ending, after Metal Sonic questions why he couldn't defeat Sonic even in the most powerful form he could attain, Sonic does that sitcom freeze frame thing and says, "Because we're Sonic Heroes!" And that's the note the game ends on. So what do I think of Sonic Heroes for the PS2? Well, as the title says, I think it's a great game with some major flaws. Most of the stages are quite fun, but there are a few stinkers that weigh the game down. The movement is usually intuitive and responsive, but its foundation has some cracks in it. The music is really good, and what little story there is alright. Oh, one other thing, the voice acting. Sonic Heroes voice acting is overall pretty hit or miss. I like most of the voices they had for the characters, but Tails sounds like he was voiced by an actual 5-year-old, and some of the line reads feel like they could have used another take or two. But anyway, I think that a 7 out of 10 is too low for this game, but given the negatives, an 8 out of 10 is probably too high. So for this review, I'm going to give the game a 7.5 out of 10, putting it solidly into B tier in my book. And with that, thank you all for watching, comment, like, and subscribe, and I'm going to make something else now.